Welcome to the epicenter of sports and entertainment. This is the Rudy Dog Show. Now, here's your host, Rudy Reyes.
Makes you want to light up your fireworks. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Rudy Reyes on the RootDogShow.com. I'll let this play out. You gotta love it. It just makes you think of Joey Chestnut and every single hot dog that he's eaten with thousands and double-digit thousands of calories associated with it. Don't worry, you won't get fat listening to this show, but you're going to be fat knowledge when it's all said. Believe me, you're going to wonder what, how, why, when, and who is being snubbed for the Major League Baseball All-Star game that's taking place in Seattle. Good afternoon, everybody. I know. Thank you for taking your time out to spend with me for a little bit here talking about Major League Baseball All-Star Snubs, and we can start at any given position there is, but I want to talk about the guys behind the ball, the ones that know how to block out, the ones that make things so much more entertaining, especially when they're trying to throw somebody out at second base with a pitcher trying to duck and cover and hopefully doesn't get a balk or throws the ball within his time that he's been given to home plate. And I'm talking about the catcher. When you think of the catcher, you think of Patrick Bailey of the Giants. I mean, really? Seriously? You're going to snub this guy? He has just massive quads, massive stops, and he's basically a switch hitter as a rookie, which makes him even more dangerous, especially when he's part of that initial rotation for the Giants. He went on a serious bench here, hitting .314 with a .542 slugging average in a percentile in 34 games. That screams to me a snub. That is snub as snub can be. Patrick Bailey's just been doing it all season long. He is the catcher, and you don't know many catchers that know how to hit the ball that doesn't have a high slugging percentage. Yeah, there's been a few here and there, but none in recent memory. None that I could think of. Can you think of any? I don't know. Get back to me. Throw me a follow at RootDog Reyes on Twitter, and we'll talk about that. We can certainly have that conversation there. But thanks for joining me this afternoon. I mean, you could look at Cal Raleigh of the Mariners, Francisco Alvarez of the Mets. Of course, the Mets are a whole other story altogether because they don't know how to win or get out of their own way, even though they did win yesterday, which was kind of amazing to some. But, obviously Mets fans are clearly amazed by this win. But to move over to the guy who receives the ball from the catcher, especially somebody who's trying to run from first into second, the first baseman, a person that really comes to mind is, you obviously should know who he is, Paul Goldschmidt of the St. Louis Cardinals. Look, the guy's no stranger to MVP awards when he won in 2022, a potential Hall of Fame conversation associated with his name, and of course, a little pedestrian for hitting as far as he's concerned. .286, .375, and .492. So you can call that pedestrian if you'd like, but I think that's pretty darn good, especially for a player that's going to make, not make this year's All-Star game. Again, snub. It's screaming snub, snubby, snub. And Luke Rayleigh of the Reyes, another snub. Christian Walker, Diamondbacks respectfully like players. Lamont Wade Jr., as well as Spencer Steer of the Reds, and the Reds have been on a tear as well, getting back to their red wave kind of way, if you will. And then the guy who almost acts as a shortstop in some situations, in some defensive motion, especially when the shift is on, is Ketel Marte of the Diamondbacks. I know they had played the LA Angels of Anaheim, and that's enough to say, especially in one full breath. First place Diamondbacks are sending these players. Marte would have been a solid addition. There's nothing wrong with him. I mean, the 13 doubles, 4 triples, 15 homers, and 60 runs, as well as 6 steals with an OPS of .867 certainly screams all-star to me, and it screams snub theater. A guy who certainly has made his way into helping this team collectively get to the first place position that they're in Arizona. Guys, like him, Thairo Estrada, the Giants, Nico Horner of the Cubs, Brandon Drury of the Angels, Hai-Sung Kim of the Padres, Nolan Gorman also of the Cardinals. These are kind of like players who find themselves on the outside looking in and all snubbed from an all-star appearance And sadly, this just continues to grow in mystery. What constitutes a snub? Why are they being snubbed? Is it personally? Is it based on numbers? I mean, what is it really about? What is preventing these guys from getting to an All-Star game? Third baseman Isaac Paredes of the Reyes. He's got a shining example of an 8.67 OPS, 14 homers, 53 RBI. I mean, the guy is an absolute machine. And of course, the best team in the American League have been that way since the beginning of the 2023 season. But then they're sending 3 All-Stars. I'm saying that Isaac Paredes is a guy who's going to be missed on that All-Star roster. Maybe because he's outshined by the other guys who are being sent to the All-Star game. I think there could have been a lot more recognition given to Isaac of the Rays in order to consider him an All-Star. And again, goes back to what my last question was: is this a popularity contest as far as these guys getting? Does it depend on jersey sales? Is it the sexiness? Does he have a lot of promotional ads? What does he do in the community? What kind of guy is he? What does he really bring that enables him to be seen? And of course, you can't go wrong with the numbers. I mean, for crying out loud, the guy's been doing an absolutely bang up job the entire time since the beginning of the season. Guys like him, J.D. Davis, Alex Bregman of the Astros, the championship winning Astros, Rafael Devers of the Sox, Red Sox, Gunnar Henderson of the Orioles, Matt Chapman of the Blue Jays, as well as Heimer Candelario of the Nationals, kind like players, guys who also deserve to have a nod or at least a look to get them to the next level, and that'd be an All-Star game. And of course, when you enter all these All-Star games, does that mean you're more marketable because so you look at the post-career of being an All-Star, and what that looks like is once they're in an All-Star capacity, does that raise their stock level? During contract negotiations, does that help them? I would say probably yes in every capacity whatsoever. Why? Because these guys play hard. They work hard. They train hard. This isn't like the NFL where Pro Bowls are just a Pro Bowl, or Pro Bowls are now more hands-off than previous Pro Bowls. You need to get back to the original Pro Bowls. Yeah, they're a little vanilla, but the baseball All-Star games are not vanilla. I mean, there are some lofty plays here and there, maybe some trickery that makes you wonder, well, how's this look? How does that look? Is that really legitimate? These are All-Star rules, right? Do they follow Major League Baseball rules? Yeah, they probably do. I would suspect, or at least they should, follow along that corridor of what Major League Baseball rules actually are in order to keep it relatively competitive. In addition to all of that, Ellie De La Cruz of the Reds mentioned and snubbed all in the same sentence. It should be noted he only played in 23 games, but the fact is that when you have a guy who's marketable like De La Cruz, who brings people to the park, who brings concessions to the stands, who has enabled people to purchase more product, more jerseys, hats, things of that nature to support the team they're a fan of. You can't remiss these guys, especially like him. I mean, you can make an argument saying, maybe in a Midsummer Classic, he's done great. But I'll be honest with you, if there was an injury, barring an injury, or if someone decided to say, I don't want to play in an All-Star game, which I don't foresee happening, of course, by any stretch of the imagination. But if there was, he'd be a great replacement player for whoever it is. Sadly enough, we have to have this conversation about De La Cruz. Been absolutely lights out so far this season. We'll see what happens. There's plenty of baseball left. We're at the midway point when the Major League Baseball season, is almost at its tipping point, headed into the latter part. And who's going to be there in October? So much baseball to be played, we can't even have that conversation. I'm Rudy Reyes on the RudeDogShow.com. Thank you for spending a little bit of your time with me this afternoon. I won't take up too much more of your time, but I want to get back to this list here. Shortstop, Wander Franco, Reyes, absolutely fantastic. He's also one of those slugging back catchers who's done absolutely fabulous work with .283, .343, .459, and okay, fine. It's not a screamer. It could be a dinger though, and he's hit a lot of those. But I think that when you look at exceptional defense as a shortstop, he's like the back catcher in the shortstop position for anybody in Major League Baseball. He's done absolutely fabulous. And then you got to include his offensive work as well, including 26 stolen bases in that. And you can go to the WAR. He's just barely shy of what Shohei Ohtani has done for the Angels. And I mean, he's only 22. He's got a whole career ahead of him. And if I can be completely honest here, which I always am, I'm going to bring that, is that marketability and PR work for this guy is not being done enough to bring him more attention. And when I say attention, I mean in the best possible way, because that's how you stay afloat, is by getting the positive attention that you need in a Major League Baseball uniform, NFL uniform, tennis player, golf player, doesn't matter who it is. So again, he could be an injury replacement guy. We don't know, but he's snubbed. I don't think it's right, but we'll find out exactly if there is an injury, and in turn, if he gets put in lieu of that. So, but we'll have to stay tuned on that one. Guys like McLean of the Reds, Perdomo of the Diamondbacks, Francisco Lindor of the Mets as well. And then the guys in the outfield, you have to look at them. They're not only just Gold Glove guys. I mean, not all of them are going to be Gold Glove, of course, and that predominantly gets handed out to the pitcher, but someone who's just so good in the outfield, and a Gold Glover in the outfield. Are you serious? But then you look at Fernando Tatis Jr., and the reason why this is a snub that I do agree with for a couple of reasons. First, PEDs play a role in his suspension last year, which hurt his stock immeasurably because of how big of a star he was. Now, if he was anybody else and not Fernando Tatis Jr., he would have been a nobody, and nobody would have even blinked an eye in regards to what he brings or what he doesn't bring to a Major League Baseball club. With that being said, I actually agree with this snub. Despite being a dynamic player and a very talented player at that, I just think that the PEDs hurt him, and the fact that he's only played 20 times in right field just a couple of years ago, I think that this is a right snub. This is a right call. Whether or not who made up this all-star list, I don't know who that is. I don't know who that could be, or individuals rather, but I just think that this is the right snub to not bring on Fernando Tatis Jr. Of the Padres to an all-star game. Another guy, and I disagree with this snub altogether, Brandon Nimmo of the Mets as well. I mean, a .282 on Sunday, that's what he hit, almost a 4.400 on base percentage, and continues to be the guy you want to see first in the lineup, not the middle of the row and not the back end of the line. He's certainly a guy you need to put off with. And of course, 12 homers, that doesn't hurt him. But then he's only 5 shy of a previous record he made last year. So you look at him and his athleticism, and I think he gives the Mets a really good chance every time he's part of the lineup. And I think that this is a poor snub by the All-Star committee not naming Nimmo to an All-Star game. And I almost agree with this. I'm kind of torn on this, and I'll let you debate that. But Christian Yelich of the Brewers, I think that this snub is probably an accurate snub, or it could be inaccurate snub, because he's meant so much to the Brewers franchise for quite some time. But he hasn't really flipped that switch. He hasn't turned the corner, literally. And in his last 23 games, he hit almost 330 pedestrian, .427, .568. 18 and 20 stolen base. So he's active on the base running, but I just don't see him tipping the edge of being able to get to an all-star game. So I think this is probably a 50-50 split in regards to a guy who either does agree to get snubbed or not. And the kind of like guys like TJ Friedl of the Reds, Verdugo of the Red Sox, Lowe of the Rays, Kyle Tucker of the Astros, Lane Thomas of the Nationals. I mean, guys a lot like that, especially Jack Sawinski, who's done absolutely fantastic work for the Pirates this year, Ezekiel Duran of the Rangers, and Brendan Marsh of the Phillies as well. Look, there's so many different snubs, and it's not as if there's a right or wrong answer here. I think this is really about getting the right guys in the right position to play the best that they possibly can. And whether or not, I mean, obviously I don't vote in all-star games. I've never voted in an all-star game. Maybe an AP poll, perhaps I could probably be a part of and write who I think, but it doesn't really change the outcome of these guys getting to a Major League Baseball All-Star game. Guys like Masakata Yoshida of the Red Sox, 29 years old. I mean, he's just killing it right now for the Red Sox, and they need guys that are hitting like him, .305, .377, almost 500 and 128 OPS in his first season here in the United States. So, again, looking at him, looking at his style, his baseball IQ is extremely high. First year playing Seaside is good for him. It's good for him. It's good for the team, good for the Red Sox. And I think this was a poor selection in snubbing him, to be honest with you. You look at some of the pitchers as well. This is probably the last on my list of guys because those are, this is your first line of defense are the pitchers. And do I always give pitchers the benefit of the doubt? Do I give them the nod to say, yeah, go ahead and throw them out? No. This is about a guy who continues to shine over and over and over again. And I'm talking about George Kirby of the Mariners. And the sad thing is the Mariners only have one selection in Luis Castillo. But, to be honest with you, you don't want to homer out here. You want to hit a homer, but you don't want to be a homer in that, you don't want to stack the roster for the city that's hosting the All-Star game, of course. But I think Kirby should be noted as a snub in this Major League Baseball game. And it's great for the city. It's great for the income the city's going to get and the environment. And the All-Star game's all about, flash and dash. And, of course, you're flashing the cash, really, at the end of the day, especially you talk about the fashion show and the PR stuff associated with that. But, I mean, he's leading the major leagues in strikeout percentage right now, 9.56 to 1, which is absolutely fantastic. And it's been in 101 innings, has hit a 3.21 ERA. Pitched a 3.21 ERA. His whip is 1.4 and 86 strikeouts with 9 walks. The guy has been on fire. He's been playing extremely well. I think this is a horrible miss. Pablo Lopez also gets the snub. Joe Ryan of the Twins, Jesus Luzardo of the Marlins, Jack Eflin of the Reyes. So many more guys just like George Kirby with similar numbers also getting the snub. And then last but not least, relief pitcher in David Bednar, who I think has been absolutely outstanding despite this 500 toss and probably one of the toughest divisions in Major League Baseball. And I'm talking about the NL Central where you got the Pirates, you got the Brewers, you got the Cardinals, the Cubs, and the Reds. Of course, they're all, these guys are going back and forth. It's a long season. This isn't going to end close. This is going to end probably the closest out of all the Major League Baseball teams within Major League Baseball in general, rather. So I think it's a question of whether or not who ends up finishing first and not worrying about who's finishing last, because all these teams, they're going to fight hard. They're going to get to it. I think David Bednar has done absolutely fabulous. And to be honest with you, it's not going to hurt them. It's not going to hurt the All-Star roster to have Bednar on with a 1.44 ERA. He's got a .89 whip, which is, I think, second or third best in baseball. 37 strikeouts in almost 32 innings, and 16 for 17 in save chances. I mean, look, the guy's been a rock, and he's been solid for the Pirates all season long. This is a horrible snub, probably the worst of all snubs from a pitching perspective as well. But I wanted to share my thoughts, my views, my opinions on this Major League Baseball All-Star Snub Tuesday, as everybody's enjoying hot dogs. And, of course, I don't think Joey Chestnut's going to have another hot dog for today, and maybe not even a hamburger as well. This is Rudy Reyes on the RudeDogShow.com. Thanks for tuning in. Go to the RudeDogShow.com. This show will be posted there, as well as you'll be able to see all kinds of great things that I've done in almost 10 years. And I'll have an anniversary show, as I mentioned before. Yes, I will. But it's getting closer. So by all means, it's going to be an all-star show. Make sure you check it out. Tune in for that one. It will be live. I thank everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. And with that being said, have a great 4th of July. Be safe and don't go insane doing it.